All right, what's up, team? Today we're going to talk about some basic geometric figures. A lot of these you've seen before, but we are going to go over them just to make sure that we are all on the same page as we progress throughout this course. So let's dive into it. I have some figures on the screen, and we're going to talk about each of these. We're going to talk about how to talk about them, like what words to use, and then what sort of notation to use when writing them down so that we can all understand what we are all saying. So let's dive in. Here we go. This first one right here. You see a little dot, you see an A above it. This should be no surprise to anybody that this we just call point A. So we would, if we were talking about it, we'd use our words, we'd say point A. Now, if we were just writing it, like in an assignment or discussing it somehow written, we would just say A. So what I'm doing here with my colors is if you see it in red, that's kind of how we talk about it using words, and in blue, that's how we would write it on an assignment or something. Okay, this next figure. On this end, there is no arrows. It just starts at point B, and then the arrow points forever to the in the right-hand direction, going through point C and D. This is what we call a ray. A ray is it's a line that goes in one way forever, but it has a definite endpoint at one end. So there's a few different ways that we can talk about this one with how many letters we have going on. So we can say that this is ray BC, or we can call this ray BD. The kicker here, and we have to be extra careful, when you're talking about rays, the first letter in your description must be the point, must be the end point, the one without the arrow. So ray BC and ray BD in this figure, they both describe the same thing. So they're both equally as correct. When writing them down, there's a specific notation that we use for ray. It's just an arrow or a line with an arrow at one end. So we have ray BC or ray BD, same thing. And notice in the notation here, the end point B, that's the side without the arrow, and it points the other direction. That's just that we know exactly what you're talking about when you describe it. Okay, this next one. We have a line. It's got arrows going both directions. It's got points E, F, and G. When describing something like this, no surprise, we're going to call it a line. A line is one that does go in both directions forever and forever. And when describing it with letters, if you're given 3 letters, you get to pick 2. It doesn't matter which 2. We can pick EF, we can pick EG, we can pick FG, we can mix it up all the way around. We can go GE, GF, FE. It really doesn't matter. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to pick 2 of them. But again, there's multiple combinations that are equally as correct. They're all right. And then in terms of notation, we would just say EF with a line above and arrows going in both directions. Again, in notation here, you could pick any combination of 2 of those letters, and it's all correct. Okay, the second line. We have this line here, but it's got endpoints at H and at I. This is called a line segment. It's just a chunk of a line. It's not going forever in both directions. So we would call this line segment. Line segment HI. Pretty simple. Then in terms of notation, just HI with a line above, or sometimes you see endpoints like that. Just make sure there's no arrows and you're safe when talking about a line segment. 3 to go. We have this angle here, and the only letter that we're given is a J. So based on this figure, the way that we see it, we can just call that angle J. Angle J. We don't know anything more about this particular one. Let's really erase that, make it a little more clear. Angle J. Notation, we can simplify angle and just draw an angle and angle J. So again, these 2 things mean the same thing. You're going to write things that look like this. You're going to say things that look like this, or that sound like that, I suppose. Okay, we have another angle here. This one's got 3 letters on it. It's got the vertex L, but then it also has a point K up on this leg and an M down on this leg. So there's 2 different ways we can talk about this one. The first way, we can say angle KLM, KLM, or we can say angle MLK. The kicker here is that the letter in the middle must be the vertex. So it's where the 2 legs meet each other. It doesn't matter what end you start at. You're still describing the same thing. We're either describing KLM or we're describing MLK. As long as the L is in the middle in this case, you're safe. There are times when you must use this notation, and this notation is always, always, always safe. But there are times when you can get away with just calling it angle J, like this one. The difference really being is, say that you have, some other segment coming out here, and there's a letter P. Well, in this case, if you just say angle L, that's very, very confusing because there's so many different options. Is it the whole thing? Is it the top half? Is it the bottom half? What are we talking about? Well, if you describe it as KLM, you know what we're talking about. And then you can also say KLP would be just the upper portion here. Okay, now notation for this one, it's just like what we did before, angle KLM or angle MLK. Pretty straightforward. Shouldn't be a lot of confusion with that one. Yikes, just dropped my cap. All right, last one. This one's a little more abstract, a little weirder. Hey, thanks so much. We're going to talk about planes, not airplanes, but like mathematical planes. Essentially what a plane is it's a flat surface that a lot of times it's described, it goes on forever in all directions, but really it's just a flat surface. And when we describe them, or when we draw them, I suppose, we generally draw them looking like this parallelogram. And I know that's confusing because you're like, oh, well, it's a parallelogram. Well, it's not. Picture a flat surface that just goes very far, maybe infinitely in every direction. And so the way that we describe a plane is there's a few different ways, and my penmanship doesn't do me any favors here, but I'm going to try to describe it. So we can call this one plane, and this is my attempt at a cursive A, cursive capital A. So we'll say something like that, plane A. A lot of times you'll see planes described with a uppercase capital letter. You can also use any three of the points within the plane. So we can say plane NOP. Now, the only condition here is you have to pick 3 points when describing a plane, but they can't be 3 points that are within a straight line, because if you pick 3 points within a straight line, you could be describing a straight line. Well, if they're not in a straight line, such as our N, O, and P, they're definitely going to be in the same plane, and that's the plane that we are describing. Okay, last piece, notation for this one, you can call it, again, this is a little parallelogram, and that's a symbol that you would use on an assignment. Let's say plane A, that's my cursive A again, or you can say plane NOP. The order of those letters doesn't matter. You could say PON, OPN, it doesn't really matter. I tend to stick with alphabetical order, but it's not wrong if you go another direction. Okay, here's 1, 2, 3, 7 basic geometric figures. We're going to do some examples in the next video.